Okay, and now this brings us on to the final session of the Tech and Innovation Summit today. Throughout today, we've discussed a number of emerging and transformative technologies, from quantum to AI to Metaverse and Web3, and now, of course, space tech as well. But what is integral is how we apply these technologies to make sure that they do have a positive impact on the UK society, economy, and of course the planet. So to round up today's session, we are going to be looking at applied responsible innovation. And to chair this, I'd be delighted to welcome my colleagues back to the stage.
Very kind of you to ask my panel to join me as well. And please take a seat. I apparently don't have a chair. But look, really thrilled to be back today. I've been following the discussion and been popping in as well. Thank you, Andy. And some really exciting discussions. I found that last one about, just thinking 2040 doesn't feel that far away, right? To think that that's the vision of space commercialization and space tech that they're looking at here in the UK, that's super exciting. And I think there's a lot more to discuss there. But we're not, and actually we started this morning, one of my panels talked about nuclear submarines, and now we're on to space. So let's see where we go with this, shall we? We were talking about responsible innovation, and this is really close to my heart. Obviously, here at techUK, we have a dedicated program looking at the digital ethics. So how do we get responsible innovation right from an ethical point of view? So from a legal, societal, and ethical point of view. And these two great panelists I know very well. It appears so they don't know each other that well, but I think we're about to change that. So we're going to talk a little bit about what are some of the ethical and responsible innovation, ethical issues we might need to think about as this responsible innovation, as innovation moves forward and goes ahead. How do we manage the risks associated with new technologies? How do we make sure that as the innovation ecosystem is moving quite at pace, that we make sure we think about how do we do this in an ethical, responsible way? Perhaps we're going to talk about some of the best practices that we're already seeing. How do we ensure this community can, be equipped with the right tools and practices that they need? But also, and I'm thinking as well, and perhaps we can draw this out of our discussion, how do we bring the innovation community and the digital ethics community, which has been, quite well established now here in the UK, are we bringing them together enough? And perhaps we need to be doing more there as well. And we're going to do all that in about 15 minutes so that everyone can have a drink afterwards. You're all done. Thank you for sticking with us. It's really, really much appreciated, because this to me is such an important part of this puzzle of how do we get this right, as Laura said. So I'm not going to introduce my panel because I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, so they can do it much better than I can. Andrew, shall we start with you? Please introduce yourself to everybody in a still a black way, who you are and where you come from.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew Strait. I am the person standing between you and wine, so I will be very quick. I'm an associate director at the Ada Lovelace Institutes. We're an independent nonprofit research institution here in London and in Brussels. It studies the impacts of AI and data on people and society, and I am formerly a big tech person. I used to work at Google and DeepMind for about 10 years on ethics and content moderation, trust and safety, public policy teams. Great to be here.
Yeah, and thanks for being with us. Carolyn?
I didn't know you had a branch in Brussels. I am Carolyn Tenholter. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Oxford within the Responsible Technology Institute, and we have responsible innovation at the very heart of all the projects that we look after.
Yeah, so as you can see, some great experts for us to really just have a conversation about, how do we get this right? So we've been exploring all day, fascinating, emerging and transformative technologies from submarines all the way up to space. Let's start maybe at the beginning, because I think I know what you're going to say to this answer, but I'm keen to explore. What technologies do you think have the potential to really disrupt society and the economy? Because this is what we're looking at, right? What are the technologies that really could do that? And then how do we get that right from a responsible and ethical point of view? So technologies, Caroline, what would you highlight?
I actually don't really like the word disrupt because it comes with a lot of baggage.
Yeah.
And I think it's better, certainly from a responsible innovation perspective, to think a little bit more about just providing us with space to rethink how we do things, to be creative. And I think, if you look at the way the first iPhone was developed, that was built from tech that already existed. It was about being creative with what was already there. And I think some of the amazing stuff we've heard about emerging tech today, it's clear that there are confluences happening, and where we might see things moving is a sort of connectivity coming together with quantum, coming together with AI, coming together with space tech to build something that, the idea might already be out there.
Yeah.
But like the Industrial Revolution, these things come together at a key point and then you take that next step.
So it's not one, it's the convergence and how they all interplay with each other. Would you agree, or is it something that's on your mind?
Yeah, very similar. I mean, I also very much dislike the word disrupt.
It's crossing that off.
No, because I think it kind of gets us off on the wrong foot when we talk about responsible innovation. I think it gives a sense that there are parts of society that we actively want to sort of rip to shreds and kind of see what comes next. And the things that I really worry about and that I see every day in my job are the use of AI and data-driven technologies and that are trying to disrupt the most high stakes of high stakes settings. They're trying to disrupt how we do social work. They're trying to disrupt who gets access to public benefits or to healthcare. They're trying to disrupt what kinds of jobs are advertised to us or what kinds of educational experiences our children might have. And my worry is we don't want to just disrupt in the hope that it will be good. We want to be very intentional and also very humble about what kinds of problems AI and data can solve. One thing that we've been focusing on quite a lot is the way in which AI and data-driven technologies are being used to try to replace very highly sensitive relational dynamics or relationships that we have in our day-to-day lives. The relationships we have with our teachers, with our doctors, with our nurses. One of the projects that really sticks in my mind is something we just wrapped, which was a public engagement exercise with people who are experiencing poverty in the UK, and specifically how they're experiencing health apps. And the clearest finding from that, we asked them hundreds of questions, the clearest finding from that was they don't want an app, they want a doctor. And when you have an app that's replacing a doctor, you're actually creating worse healthcare outcomes. If you have an app that's supporting a doctor, that's complementing that and adding something additional, that's fantastic. That's what they need. But that's oftentimes not how responsible innovation is being used. We're seeing it as a cost efficiency, as a way to do more with less, as a way to replace something in our society that perhaps we don't actually want. So I suppose when I think about the kinds of technologies that really concern me the most, it's those ones where we're talking about something that's in those high stakes settings that we're kind of pushing ahead with very quickly and are only later coming to find may not actually be what we need.
So that leads me on to, I was going to ask about, do we need to be building in or the kind of socio-economic kind of ethical skills and ethical practices into innovation? Are we doing enough on that? Because then that, you talk about intentional as they're being, put into the, society, but actually, do we need to be doing it earlier as they're being developed? And are we doing enough of that, right? It's in the development stage. So how do we get that right?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's throughout the life cycle process. I think it's in ideation. I think it's in design. I think it's even coming up really with the business plan that we're pitching to investors. I've been working a lot with VC communities lately about responsible investing practices and how do you apply kind of lessons from AI ethics into what kinds of companies you actually invest in and what kinds of culture you're creating within those companies. All in all, it's about creating the right incentives to innovate responsibly. And I think that we're moving in the right direction. I really am not a skeptic about this. I think about when I first started at DeepMind in 2017, we were just coming up with principles left and right. We had no sort of agreement on a common language or a common idea of what responsible even meant.
We have come a long way.
Completely think we have. I think the one thing I will say is we are still not great at the moment about really asking this question of functionality and efficacy of some of the applications that we're building. The incentives are still really pushing for sort of big picture, this will solve all the world's problems, it's a silver bullet, how could this go wrong? And a lot of the research that's out there at the moment, and I'm thinking particularly of one study that looked at over 700 COVID-related ML applications and found that not a single one of them worked in practice. That, to me, is something that we're not being as honest as we should be about ourselves. We're not putting efficacy and the way in which we pilot and test these technologies to really understand, do they work at the core of our business practices? So that's something I think we can still improve on and continue to see some change.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think that those big, hairy goals are kind of easy to have. it's easy to say, yes, we want to do all these amazing things. It's when you get down to the really granular level, that's where kind of responsible innovation, you need that reflective process, you need that space for intentionality in order to be able to think about these things in a very detailed way and a very careful way. And I think that space to think can get lost when you start having a conversation with your investor and there's, well, clock's ticking. We want our money back in a 3 to 5 year time frame. And if new companies and spin-outs, particularly spin-outs from universities, which have been, that research has been funded with public money, they should be able to have the space to think carefully, to be B Corps if they want to be able to say, we want to think about our environmental footprint, we want to be sustainable, we want to have good hiring practices, but giving them that space, really kind of safeguarding it, I think is really crucial.
So I want to come on to asking about ethical principles and principles of responsible innovation, are they the same? But before we get to that, just to follow on this thread, do you think then that to enable that to happen, do innovators need, as you say, the space and the time to be able to do that? Do they need people to help them do that? Or do we need to skill them so that, we talk about, I'm sure you've heard security by design and privacy by design. From an ethics community, we've been talking about ethics by design since really the start of this conversation. So is it that we need to equip them with the skills to think about ethics by design and have it in their mind? Is it that we need people to go into the ecosystem to help them figure that out? Or is there something else that we need?
I mean, I think it very much is in part a culture project. I think we lack, a real reified sense of safety culture in the AI space. It's still, in my mind, still very much move fast, break things, make a lot of claims. I mean, I'm really not trying to shame anybody, but just the reporting on Babylon Health, on Cruise this last week, it really shines through how we are incentivized still to make really grand claims and to fake it till we make it. And ultimately, that's how we damage the entire sector. That's how we lead to these kind of situations where people lose public trust. I think when we talk about incentives, one thing that we come back to time and again, and was a very big focus of the Safety Summit, is the role of regulation. I completely reject this notion that regulation and innovation are at odds. That is just untrue in every other sector. Regulation provides the hard rules, the clarity, that enables us to innovate in a way that we know is safe. It provides the foundations for public trust. It provides clear guardrails, and particularly when we talk about AI, when we have companies that are providing fundamental infrastructure that we're building on top of, like the OpenAI ChatGPT and GPT-4 products, we need some security, some clarity, some real trust that those products are safe. Ruman Chaudhuri said it best, which is that brakes are what make the car go fast. We can trust that the car can handle high speeds, and that if we need to slow down, we can. So that's the piece that I still think we're really missing in this space. I think that the EU is taking a first stab at this, but the UK, again, I think we really need to see some urgency around regulation, and not for these sort of existential risk concerns, really just for the day-to-day mundane things that concern us every day. That takes time to build. It'll take time to become normalized. We've got a long road to go on, but it's better for us to start that journey than to keep pushing it away.
Yeah, and we've started that journey with the AI white paper. We just now need it to come back. We need to see the next steps, and I agree, need to move at pace. And also, I'm sure you've heard me say this before, we're not saying no regulation for AI, but it's appropriate and it's the right to regulation can be an enabler of innovation. I completely agree. But the wrong regulatory approach can, create barriers that I'm not saying will, but can stifle innovation. So it's how you get that balance right. But Karen?
Yeah, I think the innovation piece is very interesting because it's, in my view, it's not so much regulation that stifles innovation as a poor competitive environment. And if that's what your regulation has created, if what you've created is an environment where only 4 massive players can exist, then you don't get innovation in that environment. Because innovation, as we all know, tends to come from companies that can move quickly, develop things fast, try out a few things, and that's why big companies tend to buy up small companies, because those are the people doing the innovation. If you've got regulation that encourages a kind of broad playing field and allows for a lot of companies to be in that space and for there to be fair competition, then you've got innovation. And to me, that's what pro-innovation regulation looks like.
Interesting. So I'm sure we'll come back to that as a conversation in the weeks and months to come. Absolutely. Let's bring it back to because it was kind of going through my mind before of, okay, responsible innovation and the principles of responsible innovation. You were talking a little bit about when you were talking about having the time to think about this intentionally and what you need to think about. And then I was thinking of the ethical principles we have and the kind of ethical principles we bring out, safety, transparency, explainability, accountability. Are they the same then? Do the same ethical principles apply to responsible innovation principles? Is it the same? Or are there any nuanced differences between the two, do you think?
That's a really good question. I suppose I think of ethical principles as providing a common language for us to use when we talk about the kinds of challenges that we face. They're very different from the practices that stem from those principles. And I think where we are getting to now is this question of what are the right practices that we should be putting.
So we're operationalizing those principles and how that.
Exactly. That's kind of where I see the direction of responsible innovation heading now.
Yeah.
It's getting into specifically what kinds of auditing should we be doing, what kinds of evaluations, what kinds of impact assessments. If we are going to use public participation to understand client needs, how do we even do that? I mean, these are massive, really hard questions that I think we're still working out collectively.
Yeah. Carolyn, how do your institution, how do you work with, organizations or people to help them figure that out?
Yeah, in a huge variety of ways, actually. Sometimes it's through somebody being funded to look at a particular piece of work. Sometimes a company will come to us with a specific problem and say, look, we want to do this, but we don't know. Yeah, we don't know how to do this in a kind of responsible way. And unfortunately, sometimes the answer is, yeah, you can't do that. There is no way to do this piece of work that somebody has asked you to do ethically. But I would completely agree with Andrew that this kind of foundation of ethical principles and the idea that you are taking care, that you are actively being responsible, that's where you start concretizing these principles into your daily practice and your processes. And that does kind of transpire into, as you say, sort of consultation processes, reflection, engaging with multiple stakeholders to figure out where you need to be. But it's also about anticipating where you want to get to. Not here's the tech and can I sell it? Somebody else figure out what they want to do with it. Let's think about where we want to get to, the kind of thing that we want to see happen and work backwards from there.
Yeah, so back to that, what's the problem that we're trying to solve, or what's the gap that we're trying to fill? So I'm just going to take us a little bit of, I was thinking about just a little bit away from AI. Obviously, AI is the topic du jour. It was, has been, as Nick said, last week definitely, and this year most definitely. We've done a little bit of work here with, for example, the National Quantum Computing Centre, the NQCC, on responsible innovation. In fact, in this room and having this discussion about how do we get that conversation right. Are you seeing enough activity, either through bodies like us or through UK government, around how do we take that proactive approach in supporting responsible innovation in other technologies or in other areas? Is there anything you would flag, or do you think we need to be thinking of that more? Not just I'm thinking this isn't just an AI conversation. I mean, we hold our Digital Ethics Summit every year, 6th of December, folks, you're all. And it's always been really strong of, it's not just AI. Obviously, the conversation is around AI right now. But I'm just thinking, do we need to broaden this responsible, ethical innovation conversation out so it doesn't become an AI conversation, if that makes sense?
Yeah, the work that's been done within the quantum programme is really, genuinely world leading. The UK was one of the first to have a really in-depth quantum programme.
Yeah.
And within that, as soon as that programme started, responsible innovation was built in.
Yeah.
And it's been threaded through the whole quantum programme ever since. Yeah. And pretty much every country that has a national quantum strategy now also has responsible innovation built in. And, there is a community of us who work within responsible innovation in quantum computing internationally. And we basically all know each other because there aren't many countries doing this, and there certainly aren't many people doing responsible innovation in quantum computing. But there are some companies that are taking it very seriously, that have responsible innovation people in the company, and some consultancies as well are looking at taking this they're building it in, they are trying to do this properly. Yeah. And I think, everybody is aware of lessons that can be learned from other technologies, and it's like, let's not do that with quantum.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Luciano 3D always talks about, that kind of ethical foresight, thinking ahead and looking into the future. And I suppose we need to do that and it's great that that's happened with quantum. And I'm very optimistic that as newer technologies come on board, that we start thinking about it from the beginning, which means that we can have that ethical foresight. Andrew, anything from yours?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always struck that I feel like every time we get a new technology, we feel like we're starting from a blank slate, when in reality, there's so much to learn. I mean, the UK's got, so you can tell from my accent, I am not British. I'm on my way to becoming a Brit, God help me. But I'm struck about how the UK has been such a world leader when we talk about responsible innovation historically. I mean, the Warnock Commission around genomic editing and genome, that happened here. That is a fantastic example of how, with the right foresight, with the right care, you can set global standards, professional norms, international law. That is, I think, the benefit that the UK already has a long history of, that we can see repeated. But so many of the things that we're talking about are not new. Impact assessments have been used for decades in the environmental space. Yeah, auditing. We got that. I mean, we're just writing a paper on comparative approaches to auditing in other sectors. I think that the challenge is just the figuring out what those differences are. None of this is drag and drop. And so much of this is trying to understand not only the technology, but also the market that technology is in. And that has been really hard with AI. I think in AI, it's been sort of seen as this kind of magical, wonderful wizard. I think we oftentimes get swept up in the kind of potential that it might have to simulate human interaction or human engagement. And we often lose sight of who's behind that technology. I'm really struck that the market around AI, to me, my big worry isn't so much that we won't find ways for it to help benefit our lives. It's that knowledge will be sort of captured by a very small set of companies that are really pushing on regulatory approaches that disable and remove a lot of competition. I'll spare my rant about existential risk, but I just to tee that up. That's if you want to hear that. Yes, great. We can do that in the wine.
I mean, that's over a glass of wine, perhaps.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody who works in the AI community needed a big drink after last week, but because there was so much going on. So perhaps I did have a question about the AI Safety Summit, but perhaps we'll leave that for a glass of wine, because we're just coming up to the end of our time. But this has been really a fascinating conversation and really important to have as well. So thank you so much for joining us. What final message would you like to leave the audience with today? And obviously we've got people watching still online. So the innovators of the future, the people, looking at the responsible, looking at the next generation of innovation. What's the one takeaway or one message you'd like to leave them with?
Oh, gosh. I suppose the main thing I'd say is don't be afraid to share your failures. So much of the hard lessons I learned when I was at Google and DeepMind came from our failures. They came from the things that didn't go well. And that's what shaped our practice. It's what shaped the ways in which we started to develop a culture that was really addressing learning from our mistakes and building that into what we could do next time. What I fear is that we are so siloed with those mistakes still, that it makes sharing them amongst each other, even in safe spaces like in techUK rooms, very difficult. I think that requires building out an infrastructure and the spaces and the fora in which we can share those kinds of failures, in which we can learn from mistakes, rather than having to wait for some investigative journalists to dig them up in a FOIA request or whatever it might be. But from those, I think we can further refine and learn and tweak the practices that we do in our day-to-day lives.
Great call to action. Carolyn?
Mine's a request for the UK government.
I mean, go for it.
Recognise, invest in responsible innovation, allow companies the space to be able to do this, give them, answers when their investors say, well, why are you spending time on these ethical considerations? Allow them to not have to cut corners, to be able to do things properly, but also create a resource. Responsible innovation is something that you do have to read into, you do have to learn how to do. And an SME, as particularly very small companies, if you've only got 5 people, where's your capacity going to come
Where's the
from to
time?
do that?
Yeah.
An interviewee, this has always stuck with me, said to me, I wish I had a bat phone, a responsible innovation like red phone that I could just, when I've got a problem, I want to know who I can call.
Yeah.
So responsible innovation Ghostbusters. Please.
Wow. I didn't think we'd be ending on that note today, but really, really fascinating. And thank you, Carolyn, and thank you, Andrew, for providing your insights. And you've got so much experience in this area. And also thank you for all the work that you do to helping us get this right? As you say, we were just talking before of, we're not at the start of this conversation and this journey, but it feels like we've still got a lot of way to go and a lot of work to do. So we're definitely here at techUK keen to help everybody and work together, as we always have done, to make sure we get this right. So do definitely come to the Digital Ethics Summit. If this chat has, sparked your interest in hearing more about this, you'd be very, very, very welcome. But can we please thank Andrew and Carolyn in the normal way? Thank you so much. You can